Okay, we're alive. Amazing. Okay. Let's start. Lots of great things to see tonight. Most of which we probably won't manage to see. But it's good to have everybody here. Hi, sorry. Okay. We have in this week's Sedra, El Presidente, or Vice Presidente. David Mintz is here as well. Good evening, David. Hi, Van. Okay, we're getting more people coming. This is good. It's always good. Right. This week's Parasha, we read the creation of Yaakov Avinu's family. And it's very interesting to read about the creation of Yaakov Avinu's family because you wouldn't have expected the Jewish family to be created the way it was. You'd expect Yaakov, quiet fellow, comes, marries a wife, has kids. It's all simple and easy. And it just gets so complicated. Goodness gracious, it's like unbelievable. Yeah? You'd think, can you not just do the thing like everybody else does? But we read about Yaakov Avinu. It's very interesting how Rav Shamshon of Hirsch starts this week's Seder, and I thought it was a beautiful thing that he says. Yaakov Avinu, there's actually a medrash. We'll mention the medrash first. We'll start with this medrash and then we'll move on from there. The medrash tells us that Yaakov Avinu left his father's house, and when he left his father's house, he actually took along a whole bunch of money. He wasn't going to come empty-handed to his father-in-law because he realized a guy like Lavan, what does Lavan really like? What does Lavan really respect? Money. Yeah? By the way, if you want to make the calculation, there's a very interesting calculation to be made over here. How old was Yaakov Avinu at the time when he made it to Haran? This is a hard question. Shmuley, how old was Yaakov Avinu when he made it to Haran? No. Okay, Rashi tells us that he was 63 when he left, when he got the blessings. And then we have a medrash that tells us Yaakov Avinu went to the yeshiva of Shem and Ava and spent 14 years there. So Yaakov was 77 by the time he makes it to Lavan. And it makes sense because if you work it out, 14 years until Joseph was born, and Joseph was 30 years old when he made it to become king. And there was 7 years of famine and 2 years of plenty, which is 9. So Joseph was 39. So add 39 and 14. How much is 39 and 14? 53. Right? Add 53 to 77 gives you 130. Yaakov Avinu, when he shows up in front of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, how old are you? He says to him, 130 years old. So that's how we get to the number 77. We work backwards. Okay? So Yaakov Avinu is 77 years old. Now, how long was Rivka married for before they had children? 20 years. Because, you read he married Rivka and only 20 years later did they have children. So, how old Rivka was is a different discussion. Whether she was 3, whether she wasn't 3, that's a different discussion. It's a question between the different Mefarshim, whether she was 3 or whether she wasn't 3. But that's not important. The important question to be asked over here is, how long were they married for? 20 years. As it says, they were married. Yitzchak was 40 when he married Rivka, and the Pasuk tells us, Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana B'Ledas, so Yitzchak was 60 when he gave birth to them. So how many years were there between the Shidduch of Yaakov Avinu and between the Shidduch of Yitzchak Avinu? How many years do we have, Shmuley? 77 plus. Sorry, I'm giving it to you.
No, don't worry. I'm
77. I thought no, because you're writing it down. So 77 and 20. 77 and 20. Hey, my brother just joined. Is 97. 97 years between when Yitzchak had a shidduch and Yaakov had a shidduch. What happened when Lavan hears that Yaakov has arrived? What's the first thing he does? He goes running. Why does he go running? See how much money he's got. Well, how do you know he was bringing money? What's the answer? 97 years ago, he remembered this fellow showed up with a lot of money. And he was a servant of Abraham. If Jacob himself is coming, can you imagine how much money this guy's coming with? And Rashi tells us, he hugs him, he kisses him, he's looking for the money. He's tapping him down, like, asking him, give me, I love you, my friend, I love... There's nothing there.
Yeah, he checks in his mouth.
He checks in his mouth, everything. It's like as he gives him a kiss, he's like, and who hides gems in their mouth? Okay, I mean, if you're trying to get
down
through,
money.
I have heard crazy things how people have swallow things and regurgitated them after they've come out of tax. You know, they go through the taxes, but really, but that's all that Lavan thought. That's gold teeth, right? That's all that Lavan could think of. Money. And Yaakov Avinu takes money, but the Medrash tells us Yaakov Avinu takes money and he leaves his father's house. And on the way, what happens? Who does he get accosted by? He gets accosted by somebody by the name of Eliphaz. Eliphaz is the son of Esav. And he says, my father has sent me to kill you. Eli Hirschman's here. My father has sent me to kill you. So he says, take the money. And Ani Choshev Kemes, somebody who is poor is considered a dis he's died, and therefore if you take the money, then that will do the job. And now he's without money. So what should he do? How's he going to make a shidduch, especially when you're showing up to Lavan? Meaning, if you show up to a nice fellow and you say to him, I have a great boy. Okay, what does he come with? Very little. Have you ever heard the question, what does he come with? Not such a nice question to ask. And they ask us about girls and they ask us about boys. You know, is the father willing to help out, to buy a house, apartment, something? Does he have anything to give? No.
What my grandmother used to call paper trousers.
Paper trousers?
Somebody in that position, yes. If they were broke.
If they were broke, they had paper trousers.
Papa the hosen. Yeah.
Aha, okay. That's one way to call it. Okay, paper trousers. But the point is, a guy like Lavan is waiting to see how much are you going to give? Just going to show up and give nothing?
So did well in the end.
Really? In the end, he did very well. But when he showed up, he says to him, Ach, atzmi v'sari, do you know what? The only reason I'm taking you in is because you're my family. So I'm not going to leave you on the street.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to work for me. After a month, he says, you're going to have to work for me. That's not how we do things.
It took £100,000 of labour out of him.
Yeah, he must have gotten a fortune of labor out of him. But the point is, Yaakov Avinu feels he's come with very, very little. And according to the Medrash actually tells us, Yaakov Avinu says, he looks up, Esa einai el harim. I look up, I raise up my eyes to the mountains. So the Medrash says, oh, Moshe Merfeld from New York. That's nice. Again, people that used to watch me in London, now living in New York, viewing me from New York. Hi, Reb Moshe, nice to see you. So, Yaakov Avinu says, Esa ena not only Elahorim, but Elahorim, to my parents. My parents came with so much money. How am I ever going to get married if I don't have money? And then he says, whoa. Ezri me'im Hashem. That's not true. My help comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'll always be able to get married with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. That's the one way that the Medrash says it. But Rav Shamshon al-Harsh actually says something beautiful that I'd like to share with you. And he says, Yaakov Avinu came with something much more important. What is the single most important thing in marriage? Good character. To marry a person of good character. Right? Obviously, religious, Jewish, etc., etc. But beyond that, if you're going to be looking for a marriage partner, the person you're looking for is a person of good character. And if the person doesn't have a good character, then you don't have anything. I'll tell you about this in a minute, another addition to that. And therefore, Reb Shamshon al-Hirsch tells us, Yaakov Avinu came to build his home. And if Yaakov Avinu is now going to come to build his home, what is he going to use to build his home? What is he coming to sell, so to speak? He shows up, and the question is, okay, Yaakov, come on. What do you have to say for yourself? What are you giving? He says, forget about what I'm giving. Do you know what you're getting? Do you know what we're trying to build? We're trying to build a home that will be the eternal home of the Jewish people. And how do you build a home, an eternal home of the Jewish people? By making sure you have the biggest nadan, to make sure that you bring £1 million on either side in so they can build a big house? That's what you need. That is the raw materials necessary to build a good Jewish home. That's not what we need to build a good Jewish home. To build a good Jewish home, you need somebody that's got the Jewish character, that understands Yiddishkeit, that understands HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All that is what goes into building a Jewish home. And then if you say, well, he also comes with money, or she comes with money, and you'll be able to buy a house, that's a nice extra. But that's not what you look at first. After all is said and done, then you can look at that. Remember, I said to the girls in camp, I've done girls' camps for 3 out of the last 4 years in the summer. And I give a shir on Shabbos afternoon to the leaders. So the leaders are a whole bunch of post-seminary girls, and we give a shir and we speak about different things. And I try to gear the shir towards them, and I give them the following idea. I don't know if I've said this here before. It's a shlosha kesarim heim. Listen to this one. There are 3 crowns. It's Keser Torah, Keser Kahuna, Keser Malchus, the Keser Shem Tov Al Agabeim. There are 3 crowns. The crowns of Torah, the crown of priestlyhood, and the crown of kingdom or kingship. And the crown of a good name goes above all of them. Can I ask you a question? The Mishnah starts with how many crowns?
3.
How many is it mentioned?
4.
4. Right? Crown of Torah, crown of priestlyhood, crown of kingship, and the crown of a good name is above all of them. That's 4. So why do we start off saying 3 and then we mention 4? What is that supposed to mean? So I can't remember. I think the Tiferes Yisrael says it, and then I adapted it for them to understand and to give them a specific message. The Tiferes Yisrael says the following. He says, there are 3 crowns, but those 3 crowns are worth nothing if they don't have the 4th crown that will accompany them. What's the 4th crown? The crown of a good name. I.e., think about it. Imagine you have a guy who is wealthy, really, really wealthy, but everybody thinks he's a miser and a mamzer. Right? Would you say this guy's got the crown of wealth? Or would you say, yes, he might have wealth, but if the entire world thinks he's a lowlife, he's missing something very, very big in his life. There's a big hole. And the same with Kahuna. Yes, you're a Kohen. But if people think, yeah, he's a Kohen, I know what this kind of Kohen's like. If we had more Kohanim like that, we should shut down the priesthood. Who needs a Kohen like him? Awful character, awful person. Again, worthless. Malchus, kingdom, wealth, whatever it is. Whether it's Torah, and Torah, I left out Torah before, I'm sorry. Somebody who's a great Torah scholar, whom everybody thinks is a terrible person, does not deserve to be wearing the crown of Torah. And therefore he says there are only 3 crowns, because the prerequisite to any of the 3 crowns that I mentioned before is what? The crown of a good name. When you have the crown of a good name, then you can start looking at getting into the other crowns. When you don't have the crown of a good name, then it's worthless looking for them. And I said to the women, I said, listen, you're going to start looking, or your parents are going to start looking for somebody for you, a suitable match. And I hope you find a suitable match. From Netanya, hi Peter. I hope you find a suitable match. But what makes a suitable match? What do people look for? So you look for the Talmid Chacham. You look for the wealthy boy or girl. Or you look for the girl that comes from a very, very special family. Right? Those are the 3 crowns. That's Torah, Kehuna, and Malchus. Malchus, money, Kehuna, Yichus. Torah means a Torah boy. But all those things without a Keser Shem Tov, without the fact that the boy is a mensch, they're all worthless. If you're going to marry the biggest Talmid Chacham who's going to treat you like rubbish, who's never going to appreciate you, who's never going to give you any time, who's never going to listen to your opinions because you're only a girl anyway, and what do they know? God forbid, I'm just saying. What's it worth? You'll be very, very disappointed, very unhappy. And the same with money. There are people that have married for money. If somebody says, somebody who marries for money lives to pay for every penny of it. That's what happens. You marry for money, oftentimes you end up paying for the fact that you married for money. Not physically, not currency, not dollars or shekels or pounds. But it could cost you in your health, in your freedom. Your father-in-law owns you. I bought you your house. I've given you a job. We're going on holiday. You're coming with us. You're coming with us. I mean, we pay for everything in your life. What are you going to say? I'm not coming? You out? I say, how can you do that? You owe him everything. It's very, very hard. People often, I'm not saying every wealthy person is like that, but there are plenty of people that are owned by the people that are giving them the money. And it's very, very difficult. And then you have Keser Shem Tov. So that's the Keser Shem Tov. Money, but money with menschlichkeit. And the same with Yichus. Somebody who comes from a wonderful family, who can tell you his fathers and his grandfathers and his great-grandfathers, and they were all big tzaddikim. Yeah, but you're a zero, you're a nothing, you're a nobody. You're not a nice person. Your father was an amazing person. Your grandfather was the biggest tzaddik going. And therefore, if you're not nice, I'm not marrying your grandfather, I'm marrying you. And you're not a nice person. So Yaakov Avinu says, if I'm going to bring one thing to the table for this marriage, it's not going to be money. And it's not going to be wealth. It's not going to be a name. It's Yaakov Avinu says, I come as myself. I am the package. You want to take on somebody of this caliber. This is how we build. We build a home based on good character and good morals and aspirations. Not on... They're nice extras. It did reconnect. Thank you. All these things, nice extras. But you have to realize what's real. What are you marrying for? That's what Yaakov Avinu stood for. He is, I'm what you're getting. Everything else around it is irrelevant. Okay? That's point number one. So that's a very important point. The first thing that we're going to say for tonight. Okay? Now, let's move back to this medrash that we said. I think that medrash has a very it's a strange story if you read about it. Eliphaz comes to Yaakov Avinu and he says, my father told me to kill you. And Yaakov says, well, do me a favor, please don't kill me. He says, all right, fine, I won't kill you. But what am I supposed to do? My father said I'm supposed to kill you. So he says, okay, so take my money, and then if you take my money, then it's considered, we say in halacha, ani chashuv kemes, a poor person is considered like somebody who's passed away, and therefore, since a poor person has a very difficult life, and ani chashuv kemes, therefore, you've done what your father's asked of you, and you can still leave me alive. He goes, okay, that's a good idea. And that's what they do. Very strange medrash, if you think about it. Think about what's going on over here. A guy shows up, he says, my father told me to kill you. He goes, uh-huh. He says, but I don't really want to kill you. Okay, so don't kill me. No, but my father told me. So, kibbud avaim. What about kibbud avaim? Like,
so honorable.
So honorable, right? What about kibbud avaim? Exactly. What are you trying to say here? No, but I have to honor my father. Don't you know? Honor your father and mother. Yeah, I've heard that plenty of times. But, hi Ian. So now we've had David, now we have Ian. We've had president and vice president here. Excellent. Honor your father and mother. So what am I supposed to do? He says, well, I hear you. It's a real conundrum. What you can do is you take all my money, and by taking all my money and halach, it's considered as if you've killed me, and then you can come back and you can tell your father that you've killed me because you've taken all my money, and therefore what you've done is you've done what your father's asked you to do, and you've done your kibbud avaim, and you've kept me alive. He goes, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Sounds ridiculous, no? Who's got that sort of way of thinking? And who's placated by this kind of thing? Funny that he bought it. But the answer is sometimes, and we see this in one of the Haftarahs, it says, Im choset is chasad. With somebody who is a choset, somebody who is a pious person, you should be pious. Im nova titova, etc., etc. It goes through. You go and you have to work with people according to who they are. What's he supposed to do? This guy shows up and says to him, I'm here to kill you. Really? I like my head connected to my shoulders. So he says, yeah, but I'm here to kill you anyway. My father told me to kill you. Right. And I have to do kibbut avaim, you know. Okay. He could have said something very different. What would you have said? You lost your marbles, kibbut avaim. That's what kibbut avaim is all about. You go and you kill another person and you blame it on kibbut avaim. You know, that's what we call crazy delusional people. Have you ever heard of crazy delusional people? They've killed, sadly, there have been people that have killed others, and then what do they say? A voice in my head told me I needed to go out today and to kill so-and-so. Yeah? Plenty of deranged, crazy people have said that in the past. And sadly, there'll be plenty more deranged, crazy people that will say that in the future. And what do we say about these people? You're nuts! You're crazy! You're not 100%! What's wrong with you? And Yaakov could have tried that. My father told me to kill you. Are you serious? You're now coming to me with a story of kibbut avaim and to try to get me to go along with this because of kibbut avaim when you yourself realize that's wrong? And you're telling me it's wrong. He says, I know it's wrong. I know I don't want to kill you, but kibbut avaim. The answer is, sometimes you have to work with a person who's got what they call a krumme kop in Yiddish. Krum means bent. Somebody's got a bent head, who thinks a certain way. The only way to be able to make sense to him is to talk his language. So he says, I have to kill you. My father said to kill you. All right. Well, we can't go against that, can we? No. But I don't want to kill you. No, that's also no good. Let's find a way around it. Let's maybe go ahead and say that you take all my money, and this way I'll be considered like that in halacha. Oh, that's a good idea. That's not a clever idea at all. It sounds ridiculous. But it's only ridiculous to the person that has a straight head. But if you don't have a straight head, then you have to talk to people in the language that they understand. So he takes Eliphaz and he says, I get you. I really do. Let's work with it. Let's try and make it work according to your way of understanding it, according to your process of thought, because otherwise it's not going to work at all. And it's so true, this idea of speaking to people and speaking to them on their level and understanding who they are and being able to connect with them that way is, I was just talking to my wife about it, is something that I feel so strongly about because I've sat through, I'm sure many other people here have sat through many speeches and other things where people talk to others and you just think to yourself, you've just so badly missed the boat here. I've been to speeches where there's a rabbi that gets up to speak and he starts talking to all these kids in a very complicated English, and they're saying to themselves, reiteration. Reiteration. What does reiteration mean? They just have no idea what he's talking about. Now, he found a beautiful Dvar Torah, and I'm sure if he sat down in front of you and he gave you the Dvar Torah, you would enjoy it. But you know what? You're older, you're more mature, you understand a better English and have a better vocabulary, you have a better grasp of what's going on in the Parasha. And if I share a mature idea with you, what ends up happening? I'm sharing it with mature people.
I'm thinking about what you said actually about a couple of weeks ago, contrasting how you present Hashem to children.
Yes.
How you present them to college students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very important. And the problem is, for many of us, is that we've never grown out of that. So the same presentation that exists that's a different discussion. So here, what you're mentioning is also a good point. But what you're saying basically is, when But what I was saying then at the time was, sometimes you've thought about an issue as a child and shelved that issue and never pulled that shelf back off to have a look at it and to give it a new glance or a new idea. And so, Pasha, I've heard the story of Yosef many, many times. I don't need to hear that anymore because there's probably nothing that you can teach me that's going to change my perspective on that story. Well, actually, the more you look into it, the more you learn it, the more you realize how many more angles and how much of a better understanding you can have of it. But because you got an understanding as a 6-year-old of it, you often remain with that understanding of a 6-year-old. That's one thing, and that's 100% true. Especially because I said it. No, just... That's 100% true. But now I'm talking about something else. In the presentation of ideas, you have to know the person you're presenting to and how to be able to get through to that person. Because if I'm going to try to present an idea to a person where that person is not there, then it's not going to work. So I give you a few examples. I gave a speech about halacha and morals in the workplace for what was called JCOM, now it's called the Jewel Foundation. It helps people find employment. And they asked me to come and to give a halachic talk about it. So I did it. I gave a talk about it. Now, I went through it, and at the end, they had feedback forms. And I looked at all the feedback forms because they sent them to me. The male feedback was phenomenal. It was really, really great. The female feedback was awful. Really awful. And basically what had happened there is I had written a speech with many points that are extremely pertinent to men, but not pertinent at all to women. And for frum women that are sitting in the crowd listening to me as a frum man discuss with other frum men about issues that might come up in the workplace with women, the women in the room felt very uncomfortable. The men in the room thought, that's really practical. That makes sense. Right? So, what did I do wrong? I'm talking to the wrong crowd. I'm talking to the wrong people. The men, great, but for the women, if I've not geared it towards them, they're hearing this and they go, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear the issues that men have in the workplace. Or, I went to Berlin last year and I presented, it's not even last year, it feels like last year. It was right after my son's bar mitzvah, so only 4 months ago. So I went to Berlin 4 months ago and I was asked there to present about rabbinic skills. There's a rabbinic school over there in Berlin, and they asked me to come and to give practical rabbinic advice. I said, okay, I have a bit of that. I wouldn't say I'm the most experienced rabbi, but I can share my advice. And I put together a whole bunch of different drashos. So I had 4 that I prepared. In the end, I spoke for about 4.5 hours throughout the day, and then I managed to get through 3 out of 4 of the drashos. One was called professionalism in the rabbinate. One was how to prepare a drasha. One was the rabbi at your simcha, and the rabbi in times of tragedy. Okay, so I got through 3 out of 4 of those. And one of the things that I spoke to about was about preparing different drashas. And I said to them, for example, there are certain stories that I never tell in our community. So, for example, I will never tell you a story in our community of a Rebbe and a great miracle that he performed. And the reason I don't tell these stories in our community is that whilst I have no issue with the story, and whilst I have no problem even saying, yeah, there are Rebbes out there that have done tremendous miracles, I don't think the people in our shul will hear that story and think to themselves, that's an excellent story. Often they'll hear those stories and say to themselves, does the rabbi really believe that?
It's a fairy story.
That's a fairy tale. That's ridiculous. You can't tell this story here and expect me as an intelligent human being in the 21st century to buy that rubbish. That's ridiculous. You can't say that. Rabbi, you really believed he waved his wand and suddenly he was able to travel in the darkness of the night and there was a light in front of him? Or he wasn't able to make Kiddush Levana, so he took out a handkerchief and went like this and the clouds moved out of the way? And you know who would lose all this credibility? Not that Rebbe, me. And I think this rabbi is crazy. He's crazy, he's gullible, he's stupid, and he believes all sorts of crazy, ridiculous stories. And if he believes that junk, then I don't even have to listen to him anymore. Because he's not with it. Pardon?
I was just saying, they'd switch off.
They'd switch off entirely. You're right.
You've lost them.
And you might have even lost them for good. Not only for that sermon, you could lose some people for good.
Yeah.
Because they would look and say, no. That's ridiculous. And that's definitely not true. That can't be. And so therefore, we have to realize when you're talking to certain people. So somebody said to me, isn't it a great story to tell because you will give them emunas chachamim, belief in chachamim, and to understand the power of chachamim. I said, maybe in a yeshiva that's what it's going to teach them. But in a community where people are much more rational-minded in that way, it's not going to teach them to believe in Talmidei Chachamim. And what you know what's going to teach them? To think the rabbi's a loony. That's all it's going to teach them. And you can't afford for your community to think that you're loony. Because that's it. And so Eliphaz comes, and Eliphaz has this idea. It means you need to work with Eliphaz's idea. And I even say this often to young grooms, and my wife says it to young brides. Understand, men and women say the same words but talk different languages. It's like Americans and British, but even worse. Much, much worse. Because they both speak British or American English, and yet they're saying two different things. And therefore, if you want to get through an idea to your husband or to your wife, it is important to say it in their language. Because if you don't say it in their language, they might not understand, buy into your idea, or they might not act upon that idea. Not because they're trying to be nasty, not because they're not nice, because they're just hearing different words.
Don't you think during a long marriage you can find a common language?
Definitely find a common language, but my wife still, there's a very common language, but I still know that when my wife says certain things, I wouldn't have phrased it like that, but I know what she's asking for. You know, when my wife says, do you fancy going out tonight? What she's really saying is, I fancy going out tonight. Do you want to come with me, please? Right? But she's asked me a question. She's not said, I'd like to go out. Please, can we go out? She's not asked for it. She said it like that. And there are many things where women will say things slightly differently to men. It's just a different way of wording it. And you have to realize, I'm sure you know that, I'm sure your wife must have worded things differently to you. Women in general, they don't like to be very direct about the way they say things, whereas men are very direct. And, you know, if you wear something and your wife doesn't like it, the other things that you wear are nicer. This doesn't suit you so much. Yeah? A man can look at what a woman's wearing and says, like, you know, you look like a robot in that thing. What are you wearing? Yeah? Trying to be a general or something? Well, all the buttons over here, what's with you? So she's like, why are you insulting? I'm not insulting you. I'm just telling you what I think. Say it nicely. You have to say it the way she wants to hear it, and then she'll understand that you don't like it. It's not that she wants to wear something that you don't like. She doesn't want to wear something you don't like. But she doesn't want to be insulted either. And if you're going to say it the way another guy would say it to another fellow, then you'll insult your wife. Not because you're trying to insult your wife. You're using male language, and she's hearing with female ears. And so she hears something different. And so in order to be able to communicate properly, you have to sometimes learn the language of your spouse. Because otherwise, it's not going to happen. And it's interesting, I say to my wife, and she says this to girls, she says, your husband doesn't feel put out by the fact that you're asking him to do something directly. Don't say something like, the bin is full. The bin is full. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yes, I know. But it's very full. I realized. I think somebody's put too much in it. But it's overflowing. Now she wants you to just take out the bin, please. But she hasn't said, can you please open that bin, tie a knot, and take it out to the... She just told you it was full, right? Now, when you're newly married, you hear that the bin is full. So you go, yeah, the bin is full. Yeah? And you go, the bin is full. I couldn't agree with you more. And after a while, she goes, will you just take out the rubbish? Why'd you have to yell at me? I asked you 6 times. You did not. You told me that the bin was full, to which I nodded my head and said, yes, it is. You didn't ask me. She says, didn't you realize that's what I meant? No, you didn't say so. So I say, and I've had this, my wife and I sat together about this, and she says, if you want something doing, there is nothing wrong with asking your husband to do it. Don't feel bad and ask him to do it, because if he doesn't catch what you want, he'll feel upset afterwards that you've gotten upset that he didn't do what you did. If you had said to him right away, the bin is full, please take it out. Any guy being so, that's insulting. You've asked me to take out the bin. Okay, you've asked me to take out the bin. I'll take it out, I'll tie a knot and take it out. It's no big deal. Just say so. But he doesn't want to say so. That's not how she talks. So she'll tell you the bin is full, hoping that you'll understand that she means take out the bin. It's different languages. But if you want to get through to different people, if you speak their language, you'll get it. I remember we had this funny story. This goes back to Tu B'Shvat. We were newly married, maybe either 1 year or 2 years married. I can't remember. Probably half a year or 1.5 years. And my wife went out and she made this beautiful platter. And for some reason, she made a mistake. She wanted 15 fruits and she had only 14. And she goes, oh, only 14 fruits. No problem. We'll call our neighbor upstairs, the Kravitzes. She picks up the phone, and now we had a very American neighbor, very American, and very, very extreme American accent. And my wife calls up, and she says, hi, Alana. Oh, hi, Miriam. How are you? She goes, hi. We're 1 fruit short. Do you have a pear? A pear? What's a pear? She goes, a pear. A pear? A pear. Miriam, you're making no sense. I need a pear. What's a pear? And I'm standing next to her. I'm saying, just pear. You want a pear. Finally, you hear the woman on the other end go, oh, you want a pear. Why didn't you say so? Shlomo, did you hear she wanted a pear and she asked me for a pear? What does she want? And I'm sitting there. I've said to her, I'm looking at my wife, say, pear. Just say pear. And she's looking at me like, what do you want from me? And finally she realized when she came out the phone, I guess I should have listened to you. I said, you're talking to an American. They don't hear the word that you're saying. All they heard was P-E, pear. No, she has no idea what you want. Talk to her in her language. If you had said pear, right away she would have said, yes, we have a pear and you can have one. It's learning to speak the other person's language. And that's what he does over here. Yaakov Avinu realizes I can argue with Esav. I could argue with Eliphaz. And I could try to convince him otherwise. But it's almost impossible to convince people that they are wrong. Have you ever tried convincing someone they're wrong? You ever try that? Hi, Phil. It's the only person who comes live that I say hi. That comes in real life that I also say hi to. Have you ever tried convincing someone they're wrong? What chance do we stand convincing people they're actually wrong? Very little. Very little. Right? If you ever tried it, it doesn't go very well.
Well, sometimes they say it and don't mean it.
Pardon?
Sometimes they admit they're wrong, but they don't mean it.
And then they admit they're wrong, they do their own thing anyway. Right, correct. Yes, I was wrong. They do their own thing anyway. True. But for people to say it and accept it. So Yaakov Avinu will say, Eliphaz, you're wrong and you're thinking incorrectly and, you know, the things we're supposed to do it differently. It's like, you're talking to the wall. You're never going to convince Eliphaz, who's got his set of values, to think with your set of values. It doesn't work. All you can do is you can try to use his values against him and work with that. You know, it's interesting. When it comes sometimes to discussions that we have in the shul about certain things, modernizing certain things you might want to modernize, you don't want to modernize, whatever it is. And some people are very pro, and sometimes the rabbi's against, sometimes the rabbi goes along with it. But sometimes, you know, if you're against something, if you're a rabbi against something, it's very difficult to have the argument with people who have a very different outlook on the world than you do. Whether it's issues of women, and bringing women more in and making them more active part in the shul, or modernizing certain things, or bringing in certain programming. If you believe that we should have women at the front of the shul having an equal part together with all the men, and I don't believe that, how am I going to argue it with you? Because your entire Weltanschauung is so different. So you say, yes, I understand what you're saying from your vantage point, because where you stand and in your world, that's called orthodoxy, that's how things work. But are you telling me in a modern world, in the 21st century, that's how we should look at things? In other shuls, people have looked past that. In other shuls, people are starting to think differently. What about you, Rabbi? When are you going to join the 21st century? And it starts becoming, this argument becomes very, very difficult. Because I have my set of values and he, she have their set of values. And it's hard to argue it out.
It makes you look difficult, doesn't it?
Well, it might make me look difficult. It might make them look difficult. But whoever it's going to make look difficult, we're constantly going to clash. It's different sets. I remember a fellow saying, we'll finish with this. I remember once hearing a guy, imagine you were playing a 2020 cricket. And somebody came and he says, how much time's left in the game? How much time? There's 14 overs. No. But how much time's left in the game? Another 14 overs till we finish. But how much time? He says, just leave me alone, idiot. Well, because football is a game that works on time. It's 2 halves of 45 minutes plus whatever stoppage time. 2020 cricket is 20 overs and 20 overs. You can't ask how much time in the game. Well, each over can take X amount of time, but it could take longer, and if it rains, it'll take even longer. And what if they stop for tea? There is no time. It'll take approximately, if I ask you when is the football game over, you're 75 minutes in, you got 15 minutes plus stoppage time. That is what's left in this football game. So let's call it 20 minutes. You can't say the same thing. It's 2 different systems. When you work with 2 different systems, you can't mix them and try to use one system on the other system. All you're going to get is gobbledygook. It's not going to make any sense. And so it's very important, and this is the other thing you learn from this Medrash of the Lifas, to start to learn to talk their language. You want to be able to communicate with people. If you understand how to speak to them in their language, you'll get through much, much more easily than you will if you're going to try to belabor the point in a language that they don't understand, even if it's English. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Please like and share this if you enjoy this. Pass it on to your friends.